Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rise and Grind this morning. Appreciate you guys joining us on this Thursday morning. So the hot button issue is defense. Defense. Everyone's clamoring about defense and how our defense let us down in the NFC title game. There's arguments that could be made that both sides of the ball kind of lost that game. So he was sticking to his guns, Tim Twentyman, and saying that the Lions, he doesn't see them taking a top tier free agent, defensive end pass rusher or defensive tackle. He feels that the Lions are going to stick with second tier, and then they're going to get heavy in the draft with a cornerback and a defensive end pass rusher, defensive tackle. But he does believe the Lions are going to be active with a top tier cornerback. Now, those are almost mirror images of the things that I've been talking about and things that I believe that the Lions would do. Derek, I know you have a different view. So what do you want to add, to Tim Twentyman saying that we're not going to take a top tier guy and why that wouldn't benefit the Lions?
I had the unfortunate circumstance of somebody DM me and they say, hey, Tim Twentyman's talking about we're not going to spend $20 million on a defensive pass rusher. And I'm like, where did you hear that? So they told me. I went and checked it out. And I was immediately annoyed because to go to your point about getting explain, Will, the cornerback. Do you think it's top tier, second tier? Like, give me that. What tier of cornerback do you think this free agent cornerback will be in?
I think it's top tier. I think that they're going to make a run, a valiant effort run at, a Jalen Johnson type. I really do. I think that it would behoove Brad Holmes not to try to pull Jalen Johnson away from the Bears. I mean, we would rather have that talent in Detroit, right? So I think that he's going to target that type of player with a cornerback. But like I've always said, second fiddle defensive end doesn't mean it's a bad defensive end.
Okay.
Just not your $25 million guy.
Okay. So a second fiddle, would that be your guy, Epinesa? Is he second fiddle?
Well, and what I mean by second fiddle is second tier. So
right.
It's not the top echelon, $15 to $25 million guy. It's going to be your $7 to $14 million guy. Okay. It still has great production, still has great production like an Epinesa. Yes. So to answer your question, yes.
When I heard, here's what I see. I want Brad Holmes to make an attempt at a Danielle Hunter. That's what I want. See if you can make it happen. If you can't make it happen, then fine. Because obviously it's for the future. Like I'm all about the future. Don't get me wrong. But I also know that the pass rush is in dire need of addressing. And I feel like if Brad Holmes, for the genius that he is with the cap, if he is able to snag a Danielle Hunter, if he can get a second tier pass rusher as well, because let's not get it twisted, Will. We're going to need some help because Julian Okwara is now a Philadelphia Eagle. He was a non-factor anyway, but that's the point. Is not only was he a non-factor, but we lost him in totality. So I feel like that Brad just make a move. I want to see that he tried to make Danielle happen. To me, he is the most logical one because the Jacksonville Jaguars are talking about tagging Allen. And then you have Brian Burns, who, by the way, I'm like on. If we got Brian Burns, I would be like, not excited as I would have been, let's say, September-ish, right? So I was disappointed to hear that, but I'm hoping Brad is like, haha, Tim, you think you know me, but you don't. And I'm going to show everybody that I can do multiple things, and we're going to snatch Danielle from the Minnesota Vikings, and he's going to be wearing Honolulu blue come training camp, and with all his muscles out and everything, bro. So that's what I want to see, and I hope that it happens, man. I really, truly do. But then again, bro, I mean, your guy Epinesa with a sprinkle of Van Ginkel. Hey, that's trademark, by the way. I'm gonna trademark that sprinkle of Van Ginkel. That I wouldn't be mad because that tells me that I think he was upset at the trade deadline, bro. I feel like he tried to make something happen. He couldn't do it, and you could see that he was frustrated.
Here's my response to Tim Twentyman. Retort, right? So it's like this. I look at things from a financial implication standpoint first, and what's going to happen to the team if you go out and buy big in free agency. And I'll wind it back to the Bob Quinn era. Like we really struggled coming out of the Bob Quinn era to get flush with cash. We were $67 million in the hole in dead cap. And I just did a video about it yesterday, Lions losing big money, on how those types of implications hurt the team for the future. Now we're talking about void years and what they do. But anyway, I digress. The point is, if you go out and spend big, you're going to pay for it at some point.
Right.
I think that if you look at, and maybe you should answer this question, if you look at the most glaring issue we had, I would make an argument for DBs. And the only reason why, but the argument goes both ways too, because if you have a great defensive front, your DBs look great, vice versa. But I think that if you can shut down what the passing game is doing, doesn't matter if you have a top tier defensive end. If they're good enough, they're going to get home. And I think what we had was good enough. They just didn't have enough time, and we didn't have anybody on the right side or in the middle that was good enough to really press the pocket. So my argument, or retort to this would be, I would rather spend the money on a Jalen Johnson, pull him away from the Bears. And I'm not saying he said that name, he didn't, but and I would also agree with you, Derek, that yes, same thing applies. Let's pull Danielle Hunter away from the Vikings, and you take two, big time prospects that have turned out to be animals in the NFL, and you now bring them to your side of the NFC North, and they know the NFC North well. So that's what I would do. I wouldn't be afraid of spending that kind of money on those two guys for that circumstance. But if it was anybody else, I would have a hard time with it.
Hey, I'm with you, bro. I agree with you. The only thing that the way that I look at it, Will, I heard everything you said. I agree with everything you said. But if you look at Brad Holmes, year 3, what did he do? He came out the gate, bam, bam, bam. CJ Gardner-Johnson, Cam Sutton. He drafted Brian Branch in the draft, Emmanuel Mosley. It was like, okay, 4 guys in 6 weeks secondary. Why? Because our secondary was less than suspect, right? So my way of thinking is we knew that the secondary was an atrocity last year. He came out, he obliterated it. It was like, wow, it went from 0 to hero overnight. So now what? Never once touched you're addressing the D line was Broderick Martin and the land before time. That was his addressing of the D line. So now I would think by default, Will, it's like, okay, yes, we need some help in the secondary. I love Jalen Johnson. That would be fantastic. Him, L'Jarius Sneed, any one of those guys, right? But now it's like, okay, we'll patch that up through the draft maybe. But this defensive line, we can't let a Danielle Hunter walk away. If he's available and willing to come here for what we're willing to give him, let's go. Because guess what? He's going to win much sooner with the Detroit Lions than he is the Minnesota Vikings. He wants to stay a Viking his whole career, but, he also wants to win too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that he has a much bigger opportunity in Detroit right away because the Vikings are going to be going through a period of change because you've got Kirk Cousins, whether he's coming back or not, but if they have to get a new quarterback in there, that most certainly usually takes some time. It's very rare that a rookie is going to come in and step in and play lights out like we've seen with CJ Stroud this year. Very rare. Okay, that's like 1 out of every 5 years. It seems like that happens. 1 first rounder every 5 years seems to hit the mark. So they're going to struggle in that area. Taking talent away from other teams, I think, should be first priority for Brad, and especially in the NFC North. I think it should be a first priority, but I see it happening more next season only because I think we're going to have a little bit more money. But we'll see. We'll see what happens this year with contracts.
It's $26 million. So just to let you know that.
Yeah, and so I'm not going there. So I'm not going there. So here's the other big question.